The Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross. Book 2, Chapter 19, begins to explain the 10 steps of the mystic ladder of divine love, according to St. Bernard and St. Thomas. The first 5 are here treated. We observe, then, that the steps of this ladder of love by which the soul mounts, one by one, to God, are 10. The first step of love causes the soul to languish, and this to its advantage. The bride is speaking from this step of love when she says, "I adjure you, daughters of Jerusalem, that if you find my beloved, you tell him that I am sick with love." This sickness, however, is not unto death, but for the glory of God. For in this sickness the soul swoons as to sin, and as to all things that are not God, for the sake of God himself, even as David testifies, saying, "My soul hath swooned away," that is, with respect to all things, for thy salvation. For just as a sick man first of all loses his appetite and taste for all food, and his color changes, so likewise in this degree of love the soul loses its taste and desire for all things, and changes its color and the other accidentals of its past life, like one in love. The soul falls not into this sickness if excess of heat be not communicated to it from above, even as it is expressed in that verse of David which says, "Pluviam voluntariam segregabis Deus hereditati tuae, et infirmata est," etc. You shall set aside for your inheritance a free rein, O God, and it was weakened, but thou hast made it perfect. This sickness and swooning to all things, which is the beginning and the first step on the road to God, we clearly described above, when we were speaking of the annihilation wherein the soul finds itself, when it begins to climb this ladder of contemplative purgation, when it can find no pleasure, support, consolation, or abiding place in anything soever. Wherefore, from this step it begins at once to climb to the second. The second step causes the soul to seek God without ceasing. Wherefore, when the bride says that she sought him by night upon her bed, when she had swooned away, according to the first step of love, and found him not, she said, "I will arise and will seek him whom my soul loveth." This, as we say, the soul does without ceasing, as David counsels it, saying, "Seek you ever the face of God, and seek you him in all things, tarrying not until you find him," like the bride, who, having inquired for him of the watchmen, passed on at once and left them. Mary Magdalene did not even notice the angels at the sepulchre. On this step the soul now walks so anxiously that it seeks the beloved in all things. In whatever it thinks at once of the beloved. Of whatever it speaks, in whatever matters present themselves, it is speaking and communing at once with the beloved. When it eats, when it sleeps, when it watches, when it does anything whatsoever, all its care is for the beloved, as is said above with respect to the yearnings of love. And now, as love begins to recover its health and find new strength in the love of this second step, it begins at once to mount to the third, by means of a certain degree of new purgation in the night, as we shall afterwards describe, which produces in the end the following effects. The third step of the ladder of love is that which causes the soul to work and gives it fervor so that it does not fail. Concerning this, the royal prophet says, "Blessed is the man that fears the Lord, for in his commandments he is eager to labor greatly. Wherefore if fear, being the son of love, causes within him this eagerness to labor, what will be done by love itself? On this step the soul considers great works undertaken for the beloved as small, many things as few, and the long time which it serves him as short, by reason of the fire of love wherein it is now burning. Even so to Jacob, though after 7 years he had been made to serve 7 more, they seemed few, because of the greatness of his love. Now, if the love of a mere creature could accomplish so much in Jacob, what will love of the Creator be able to do, when on this 3rd step it takes possession of the soul? Here, for the great love which the soul bears to God, it suffers great pains and afflictions, because of how little it does for God. And if it were lawful for it to be destroyed 1,000 times for him, it would be comforted. Wherefore it considers itself useless in all that it does, and thinks itself to be living in vain. Another wondrous effect produced here in the soul is that it considers itself as being most certainly worse than all other souls. First, because love is continually teaching it how much is due to God. And second, because as the works which it here does for God are many, and it knows them all to be faulty and imperfect, they all bring it confusion and affliction. For it realizes in how lowly a manner it is working for God, who is so high. On this 3rd step, the soul is very far from vainglory or presumption, and from condemning others. These anxious effects, with many others like them, are produced in the soul by this 3rd step, wherefore it gains courage and strength from them in order to mount to the 4th step, which is that follows. The 4th step of this ladder of love is that whereby there is caused in the soul an habitual suffering because of the beloved, yet without weariness. For as St. Augustine says, love makes all things that are great, grievous, and burdensome to be almost nothing. From this step the bride was speaking, when desiring to attain to the last step, she said to the spouse, "Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm, for love," that is, the act and work of love, "is strong as death, and emulation and importunity last as long as hell." The spirit here has so much strength that it has subjected the flesh, and takes as little account of it as does the tree of one of its leaves. In no way does the soul here seek its own consolation or pleasure, either in God or in anything else, nor does it desire or seek to pray to God for favors, for it sees clearly that it has already received enough of these, and all its anxiety is set upon the manner wherein it will be able to do something that is pleasing to God, and to render him some service such as he merits, and in return for what it has received from him, although it be greatly to its cost. The soul says in its heart and spirit, "Ah, my God and Lord, how many are there that go to seek in Thee their own consolation and pleasure, and desire Thee to grant them favors and gifts. But those who long to do Thee pleasure and to give Thee something at their cost, setting their own interests last, are very few. The failure, my God, is not in Thy unwillingness to grant us new favors, but in our neglect to use those that we have received in Thy service alone, in order to constrain Thee to grant them to us continually." Exceedingly lofty is this step of love, for as the soul goes ever after God with love so true, imbued with the spirit of suffering for his sake. His Majesty oftentimes, and quite habitually, grants it joy, and visits it sweetly and delectably in the spirit. For the boundless love of Christ the Word cannot suffer the afflictions of his lover without succoring him. This he affirmed through Jeremiah, saying, I have remembered you, pitying your youth and tenderness, when you went after me in the wilderness. Speaking spiritually, this denotes the detachment which the soul now has interiorly from every creature, so that it does not rest and finds quietness nowhere. This fourth step enkindles the soul and makes it to burn in such desire for God that it causes it to mount to the fifth, which is that which follows. The fifth step of this ladder of love makes the soul to desire and long for God impatiently. On this step, the vehemence of the lover to comprehend the beloved and be united with him is such that every delay, however brief, becomes very long, wearisome, and oppressive to it, and it continually believes itself to be finding the beloved. And when it sees its desire frustrated, which is at almost every moment, it swoons away with its yearning, as says the psalmist, speaking from the step, in these words, My soul longs and faints for the dwellings of the Lord. On this step, the lover must needs see that which he loves or die. At this step was Rachel, when, for the great longing that she had for children, she said to Jacob her spouse, Give me children, else shall I die. Here men suffer hunger like dogs, and go about and surround the city of God. On this step, which is one of hunger, the soul is nourished upon love. For even as is its hunger, so is its abundance, so that it rises from here to the sixth step, producing the effects that follow. End of chapter 19.